Hello, and welcome to Discovering with Dr. Deb. We're new to podcasting, but I certainly hope this content is helpful to you. Over the course of the next couple seasons, I'll be sharing content about the Enneagram, trauma, and how living in this pandemic has added a lot of trauma to our lives, and how to move on from here. EMDR, eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing, and how it helps people move through and past their trauma, self-care, and more mental health stuff. We'll be spending the first season looking at the Enneagram and how you can use the Enneagram to learn more about yourself and why you do what you do. Discovering the Enneagram with Dr. Deb is next. Hi, and welcome to this episode. This is my Enneamigo.
Enneamigo. So we've been Ennea pals,
yes,
Ennea friends,
yes,
Ennea buddies, Ennea compadres.
Ennea compadres.
Yes.
Yes. So this time we are Enneamigos.
Enneamigos.
Yes, this is Jason, my co-host on this season of Discovering with Dr. Deb, Discovering the Enneagram.
This has been fun.
It has been fun.
It has been fun.
So we have done a little overview of each of the numbers. We've also talked about triads, paths. Oh, what else?
We did
wings.
Yeah, we did wings and things.
Wings and things. We did.
Yes.
We've had fun with this.
We have had a blast. A
Right.
couple of weeks ago, we started with our eights.
Yes. Yeah. No, this is the eights.
I mean, with our, oh yeah, this is our first one. Oh my gosh, what world am I in? I'm a 3. I don't even know where I am. I'm oblivious to everything. Yeah,
But
this
you
is
know
8.
what?
But in 2 weeks, we're going to be doing our 9s.
Yes.
Yes.
But you know
okay.
what? You're going to make it look good because you're a 3.
I'm covering it up right now.
Keep covering it up.
Covering that turd up. Put a
Right.
cloth on it. Oh my God.
Okay, so today we are going to do a little dive with the 8s. We have a male 8.
My name is Blake.
Hi.
I'm an 8.
Yeah, tell us a little about yourself.
So I'm a dad and a husband. I've got 3 kids and I am a worship pastor. So
Okay.
and I'm awesome.
And your bride is
My bride's a 9.
A
So
9.
Rebecca's a 9.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. And then we have Missy, and Missy is in Nebraska, so we're zooming her in. And tell us about yourself, Missy.
Hi guys. So I'm Missy. I'm an 8. I'm a mom and I'm a gym owner and
A wife.
coach. I'm a wife to a 1. So we'll get into that.
Yes, we will. All right. So what we're going to start with today is a little bit what it's like to be an 8. So we're just going to hit a couple, maybe 5 or 6 things. Like you might be an 8 if.
Mhm.
So the first one here, you might be an 8 if you've been told that you're too blunt or too aggressive. You might be an 8 if it's hard for you to trust people.
Mm.
You might be an 8 if saying no isn't a problem for you. Yeah, I'm not an 8.
For real.
You might be an 8 if you don't like it when people beat around the bush. You want them to get to that point.
Mhm.
You might be an 8 if you don't want people to mess with your people. Like you're protective and that's it. You might be an 8 if you believe that if God wanted people to wear their hearts on their sleeve, he would have put it there. That one just cracks me up. So that's a little bit about what it's like to be an 8, but we've got some questions. We're just going to dive in and kind of hear from our experts who are 8s themselves.
Mhm.
So our first question really is like, honestly, if you could just tell us a little about like, how did you get into the Enneagram? How did you learn you were an 8? What was your first thought when you discovered you were an 8? Was it like, oh my gosh, or was it like, yeah?
So I'll jump in. So
Okay.
I learned about the Enneagram through a podcast I'd listened to with a couple of guys. It was called the Liturgist Podcast. And so I heard about it from them.
Okay.
And then eventually I was listening to some Sleeping at Last content, which you haven't checked out, you need to check it out. And my wife and I were figuring out, who are we?
Yeah.
And through our Enneagram process, we had always heard like you kind of hate your type. Like it took her 2 or 3 years to figure out that
Yeah.
she was a 9 and be okay with that. Actually,
Right.
she knew she was okay with it. And ironically for me, I pressed play on this song by this last guy about the Enneagram, man. I went, yeah, it's me. And it's great. And I think it's awesome.
Read your mouth.
I was like, man, that's me.
That's funny.
And I loved it.
I like it. Miss, what about you?
So I had actually never heard of it. And I've probably taken every other personality test as like an entrepreneur, like going to things, and I had never heard of it. And I went to a Brave Enough retreat, which is like a women's leadership, kind of professional women's empowerment, kind of retreat. And one of the retreats was all about Enneagram.
Right. And that's where we met.
Yes. And so I had to take it. So I didn't know, like, I didn't know what the numbers were. I didn't know what the other numbers were, but I remember the second sentence of like the printout that you get was that
You're like, oh my
majority,
God.
the majority of sociopaths are 8s. And I was like, oh, well, this is fun. Like, okay, like, yay. I have no idea what I just got into. So
this is awesome.
yay.
Yeah. Yeah. So
That's so funny.
So could you guys like tell me you're an 8 without telling me you're an 8?
Oh man. Tell me you're, I just like earrings, the whole, I'm just like, I start like looking at the whole thing, like my whole body is telling you I'm an 8.
I'm going to do what I want to do.
Yeah. It's like, I'm just, so I mean, how do I tell you I'm an 8 without telling you I'm an 8? Just look at me.
That's awesome.
I know our 9s didn't have any visible tattoos. Our 8s
They didn't. I love it that both of our 8s have tats. This is great.
I'm 32 years old and I just got my ears pierced. Like, who are you? You're an 8.
Do what you want. Do what you want, 8.
Yeah. What about you, Missy?
What does my necklace say?
Oh, I know what your necklace says.
So we were so tell me you're an 8 without telling me you're an 8. So me and Deb sat next to each other at the last retreat, and her shirt said something like, spread kindness everywhere. I'm sitting next to her. My necklace is the F-bomb.
Yeah. Yes. It's so true. It's so true.
My.
I will get Kendi a copy of a picture of me wearing the shirt I wore at the retreat so she can put that up here. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Okay. So you have to tell the story about when you were wearing that necklace and you went to that table and that.
Oh,
this is such an 8 thing.
Okay. Yeah. So this is totally tell me you're an 8 without telling me you're an 8.
Right.
So I was at a like conference retreat thing, and they had booths and kind of retail, like, I don't know, like kind of vendors like other conferences do. And one of the vendors was a pretty expensive, like pretty high end, like jewelry, little vendor. And the vendor was packed. So there were tons of women trying on necklaces, trying on rings, all these different things. And I pick out a necklace that I want. So I'm purchasing it. I'm not even like just looking. Like, I've handed it to her. I've said, I'm purchasing this. And she looks at me and goes, oh God. And she goes, that's fun. Anyway. And she goes, you don't wear, now, mind you, the conference was primarily female physicians, like female doctors. And so there's a stigma, with this, everything. So she goes, oh God, you don't wear that necklace to work, do you?
Yeah.
And she was talking about this. And I said, what? And she's like, the necklace you're wearing, I hope that you don't wear that to work. So then it took a turn where she was basically telling me where I could wear this necklace. And she said, I hope that you don't wear that to work. And my response was, in front of like 40 people, I said, well, I own my own business and my boss says that it's fine. So I will wear this necklace wherever I want. You can finish charging me for the one that I'm trying to buy from you.
And that in itself, that's 8. That's a wrap.
Thank you.
Thank you, Missy.
That was it.
Hi.
That's so funny.
And then of course I proceeded to like run back to my table and like listen to this. This person was gonna do this.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I was embarrassed for her.
Why?
Because I'm a nine.
Why?
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. Boy, that's it.
Well, we had several other 8s and they were high-fiving.
Oh
us.
yeah, they were. Boy, this is great.
Yeah. Oh
How
gosh,
funny.
I love it. So what do you guys like? Really, what do you like about being an 8?
I mean, it's the best Enneagram type you can be, man. No, so here's the deal. Here, being an 8, I had a friend who recently told me, like, I collect people. And so there's like, I love the fact that just in general, there's this sense of like where you go, there's a community of people that are following you. So there's this sense of like whether it's organizing people or being the type of person that takes charge. And also like with the entrepreneurial spirit type thing, it's like, no, man, like, I mean, like I can trust me. You can trust me.
Right.
We can all trust me. Like, let's rock and roll.
Yeah.
Which can get me in a lot of trouble, but gives me a lot of self-assurance along the way. And I end up figuring myself out at some point. So that's one of the greatest pieces to it.
Do you have a hard time? Do you guys find yourselves having a hard time following other leaders?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yes.
Yes.
Because 8s are in my opinion, 8s are kind of charted as very stereotypical, strong leaders.
Yeah.
They can be healthy or unhealthy, which could determine, how many people to have following them.
Yeah.
You're not a leader if no one's following you, right? but I mean, in terms of leadership, I know that I have a few 8 people that are close to me, they're 8s, and I see them as being very, very good leaders. But I'm not sure how I would feel if I were them trying to, like, because how to get things done.
Sure.
And sometimes when you're following someone else that doesn't know how to get things done, that's hard.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do either one of you want to respond to that? I just kind of threw that in there, but I think it's a valid question for the 8.
And I know, I'm just going to shut my door. I have a dog that's freaking out. So I will say that, and this was one thing that I had to learn kind of the more that I dug into Enneagram, is that 8s don't necessarily want to lead other people, that 8s don't necessarily, I'm not going to say want to be in control, because we do want to be in control, but it's more of like, we want to be in control of ourselves. So
that's really good.
That, like, the world then kind of pushes us into leadership
positions, right?
And my example with taking charge or leading, it's if somebody's competent, like, and I like where we're going, I have no problem. It's like, I have no problem being a part of it, but I feel like because 8s are such control freaks, are so direct, so decisive in stuff that they do, it's when you're with someone that is attempting to lead and maybe they're not doing it as good as you think that you could do it, or those things, there is no sitting by.
Yeah.
Right.
So there is no not giving your opinion, not stepping in, and just, okay, we need to fix this. And it's you're fixing it because you can.
Yeah.
And we can't sit idle and just, all right, I guess the ship's just gonna go off course. Like,
right.
So I think, and with what she's saying, I think there's maybe a misconception, not trying to get into serious stuff quickly, but like the desire to be in control. So like, oftentimes, and I have to admit that my 8ness, my need for control really comes from a fear of rejection. And so I'm so terrified so I'm a social 8, so I'm a counter type. So I like to organize, collect people, right? And so there's a fear of, I'm going to be rejected. There's that wound. And so I go and I organize people around me, but really what's happening is I need somebody to stick with me long enough to say, and this is hard for me to say as an 8, you're trustworthy, but also like, hey, Blake, you're safe. Like you and all of your bigness, because I'm throwing out like crassness, I'm throwing out all kinds of stuff to try to figure out, will you stick with me?
Betrayal's a big word that they use with 8s. Like, you have a fear of betrayal. and a fear of people,
Mhm.
stabbing you in the back or
Yep.
whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so it makes it really easy. Like, tell you what, the way me at my most unhealthy is whenever I'm like, you know what, tell you what, I'm going to take control, because what that is that's keeping me from being vulnerable.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so learning to lean into that. I'm really lucky. I've got a wife who really challenges me to that. And also I've got an amazing boss who he is, really, like, we have conversations like, Blake, it's okay. You can let the Hulk out right now. Or like, no, it's okay. Like, let's roll him back a little bit.
Right.
And so it allows me to have that safety to know, like, okay, cool. No matter what happens, no matter what comes flying out of my mouth, everything's okay.
Mhm.
And that helps me not have to be in charge all the time.
It's good.
Yeah. I'm curious. I know, so I'm married to an 8, and 8s kind of give off this persona like they don't need to be defended. Like if they do something and it doesn't land well or something. And and I'm a 9, so we don't assert ourselves. So I mean, I don't often feel like the need to defend him. And he often will say, I didn't ask you to. But on the other hand, you want to know who your people are that you can
Sure.
trust.
Yeah.
So by kind of, having his back,
Yeah.
I feel like that's important. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, yeah. So I think one of the first things is there's a misconception, and I can't speak for you, Misty, but there's a misconception, I think, as a whole, that 8s don't have a softness.
Right.
Like I have a really soft, you take away the armor,
Yeah.
and there's actually a really tender spot inside of me.
Right.
Mhm.
And so actually one of the most important things is to feel like I do have somebody who will advocate for me.
Right.
Because really and truly, the world is set up in such a way, and quite honestly, I've set up my world in such a way where I'm the only advocate for myself. And so to have somebody else step in and be trustworthy or safe actually gives me an opportunity to put down my armor a little bit.
Gotcha.
And be able to actually have more healthy
It's not as
relationships.
taxing in those
No.
moments where you can lay it down and go, okay, I'm safe here. Yeah,
Right,
this
right,
is a
right.
safe place.
Yeah.
Well, and I think just the nature of, and I know this is probably a question that's going to come up, but I mean, all the numbers are born, but I feel like things really happen to somebody to make them an 8.
Yes.
Like
Mhm.
Yes.
you're not just, 8's not a number that just happens
Right.
with like normal trials and tribulations of life.
Right.
And it is made, like something went wrong.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
so you do like Blake kind of said the same thing. And I, again, not speaking for all the 8s, but I feel like people that are 8s, something went wrong very early on. And
Yep.
so you are very war weary because it's just been you. You've
Right.
learned that you have only yourself to depend on, that you're going to get it done. You're going to rise. Like I'm a chronic, like overachiever, type A driven, all of those things to just be perfect enough so that nothing will ever reject you. Nothing will ever hurt you.
Mhm.
Being in control, just like out achieving all of the negative things. And I know in my world, it was, I really only had there was a belief that I had myself. So again, just like your husband said, I'm not going to ask someone to defend me because I
Right.
don't know.
Right.
If someone asks me, but it's so nice to feel like you have someone on your team.
Right.
So it's almost like we would never ask for it, but if somebody just does it, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yay.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you're just like, oh my God, I didn't have to fight that battle alone.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
You don't really have the ability to say, will you fight this battle with me?
Right.
It's more of, hoping that you can surround yourself with people that just get it, that like, man, she's going to do the same thing for me. I'm going to do the same thing for her.
Mhm.
That's really
Mhm.
good. That's really good.
And the experts, the Enneagram experts, they always say, I've heard a few of them, Suzanne Stabile and Ian Morgan Cron, they say 8s had something significantly traumatic in their childhood
Yeah.
that, like you said, that just really made them an 8.
Yeah.
So,
Every 8 that I know,
mhm,
that I know personally,
right.
that I have only ever worked under 8s.
Really?
I've never had any other boss besides an 8.
Mm.
I've had 3 bosses
Yeah.
in my lifetime, and they've all been 8s.
Oh, wow.
And each of them have winged
Yeah.
a little bit differently.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so I feel like when I'm sitting here and I'm hearing you guys say these things, I'm like, yep. Because you learn to adapt to that leadership style.
Sure.
And, you know, the boss that I currently have, you know, I was walking in one day and he's strong in nature and in stature and just, you know, he's built and, you know, and just a very strong, you just look at him, you think, sure, that guy's a
force to be reckoned with.
He is a force to be reckoned with.
That's right.
And, you know, I walk in one day and he's crying.
Yeah.
And he was so moved by somebody's situation. He was crying and I was like, wow, 8s have a soft side, you know, which I knew that because of my previous experience with my, you know, my other 2 bosses and knowing that, and they have all been great leaders, but just seeing that side, I think it's a perception that the world thinks 8s don't have a soft side. You know?
So it's interesting you say that, and I'm not trying to riff off of that or anything, but the reality is you know, Richard Rohr wrote a book on the Enneagram that's unbelievable, and I find it this theory fascinating. His theory is that we have a soul child, and this is who you were born to be, right? And so there's this idea that making our way back home to ourselves is actually trying to make our way to our soul child. And so whenever you think about that, what you're thinking about is who are you in health and who are you, you know, in stress. And so really the way home for an 8 is to the tenderness of a 2. And so the last couple of years for me is just recognizing like I am full of emotion. I'm like, and I honestly, I need somewhere to let it go and let it out and let it. And so I have found that as hard as it is for me, one of the most freeing things I've done in the last couple of years is start to use words like kindness and use words like, because the reality is I wasn't interested in any of that whenever I was trying to control my world. But the more I moved into health, the more it was like, you know, and I had some demons I had to wrestle with, the traumas and stuff. Like they were, and whenever I actually started dealing with those traumas, what I realized was that 8 was born out trying to protect young Blake.
Exactly.
That is still, and so really and truly by doing that, I was able to go back, and I was quite honestly, was able to reconcile with the child in me, the 2 in me, that at some point I put away and said, you're not strong enough to defend yourself against the world, so I'll do it for you. And that's been a massive shift for me.
Right. And so that's allowed you to kind of tap into your soft side.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What about for you, Miss?
Well, okay. So, and even piggybacking on like from a boss perspective. So, I mean, I am a boss. I have employees. I've had, you know, tons of employees. I've had employees that the perception has been that they've lied and they've left in a very negative way. And the way that I have to keep going after something like that happens is then perceived by other employees as very cold, very calculated, that you didn't care. And then luckily, in some of those instances, I've had other people in my life kind of come to my aid, like that, like, do you realize that like, this is her using the only coping mechanism she has to make sure the rest of you have a job, to make sure there's a gym for all the members. Like you guys are focusing on like the person that left and not maybe what they did to her to make her react like that. And I think that that's a big stereotype with an 8, and with, I think, trauma in general is my favorite quote in the world, like psychology quote, whatever, is nobody wants to know why you're reacting this way. Or nobody wants to talk about what they did to you. They just want to talk about how you're reacting.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
From an 8 perspective, like it's not okay to cry. It's not okay to be emotional. It's not okay to, you know, do everything. And so anger was generally, I think, the easiest emotion for an 8. So I kind of heard that a little bit with like what Blake was talking about. And that's how I used to be a leader. And again, from a female perspective, if you're going to lead, you need to be a man.
Right.
If you're in a business, you need to be a man. When you're in a male dominated field, you need to be a man. And so people walk in the gym and they go to one of the male coaches and they tell them, wow, you got a great gym here. Like your truck's badass. And they're like, that tiny little blonde up there, it's hers. And she's
yes.
like, she just heard you. You might want to just say you're sorry. Like, just look at her. They're like, she's watching. They're like, just act like you didn't say it. So, but it was like, even when I was a professor, and I had a couple male students of mine coaching for me. And I remember somebody came in and went up to one of my students, and they were like, oh my God, your gym is amazing. And they're like, oh, it's hers. Oh, is that your wife? And he's like, no, that's my teacher. And they're just like, oh. And so I was always taught that you have to be aggressive. You have to be domineering. You have to be the man to be in charge. And I think my biggest area of growth, from a boss perspective, to find, which is why I do everything anyway. I'm still doing everything to help people, to put other people first. It's just not the way that a 2 does it. That I still want those things. And so my growth as a boss was, I've learned that simply saying I'm disappointed, or simply calmly making eye contact with someone and going, how can we keep this from happening again? That legitimately scares the bejesus out of everyone, even more.
True. Being quieter scares everyone.
So when you have, and I've had people tell me this, like they walk into the room and they're like, you're empty.
I know.
I'll sit there and if I'm really upset with someone, all of a sudden my voice is just like, all right, let's talk about this right now.
I know. I'm scared.
And it just immediately, I've got the room. I've got you.
And so I've learned that, like, because it is, people have said your energy is intimidating. Like, your energy is intimidating.
Yeah.
So I've learned that people know you. And so when they've done something wrong, you don't need to fly off the handle. That's what they expect. So by staying in your calm achieves a lot more things, and expressing some of your emotion. And then on the flip side, like being a wife, being a mom, again, that anger, like flying off the handle, I think is expected. I think it's easier for us to protect kind of the tender side. And that is still something that I fight with every day. But I found that it's a constant reminder to myself that I have to let the people that I love know that I love them, especially if I want it in return. And 8s, I feel like we usually wait for it. Like, we're usually like, I love you unless you don't love me. And then I was just kidding. Like,
yes.
Please tell me.
There's some expletives.
Yes.
Thank you for that. That is so helpful though for us non-8s to kind of hear. Because one of the questions we're going to get to is kind of like, how do we express to others what we need? As an 8. Yeah.
So what about you, Blake?
Whenever I think about the things that I need from people that love me, honestly, that's a really hard question to answer because of the fact, like, I don't want to need anything. And so, but part of it actually was just needing people to push past that. So live with my intensity, and step into my intensity. Don't lean away. Come closer to me, because really what's happening is, even the louder I get, or the quite honestly, even the more crass I become, oftentimes I'm asking you, will you press into me? And so a non-judgmental, non-controlling, and quite honestly, a quiet spirit is something I really need. My wife will tell you that I need quiet and solitude more than most people would ever expect. I sit at home and I read books in the quiet, and that's something I need from loved ones, is just that non-controlling, non-judgmental spirit of, like, I'm stepping in, I'm leaning into your intensity, but I'm also going to invite you into the quiet. I'm going to invite you into your own soul and allow you to begin exploring. And so that's that kind of invitation. That's a really philosophical answer.
So because I've had bosses that have been 8s, I had a boss one time tell me that he wasn't brass. He was just very passionate.
Yeah.
and so do y'all relate to that? It's like, okay, I'm just, when I get loud, or when I get, I get fierce, and when I get intense, it's just, I'm so passionate about what I'm talking about. and I know this is the way we can fix it, you know? And so he just gets just the level of intensity was a word that you used. It's like, that's a perfect word for 8s.
I can be talking about
Intense.
anything. I can be talking about anything, and my blood pressure and my noise level just keep elevating. And I'll have moments where like, I mean, I know we're talking about sports. I'm sorry, dude. Like, I'm not angry. I just really am into this.
I love it. I love it.
What about you, Missy?
When I'll second some of that, you have to like, intensity can't scare you off. Like big emotions can't scare you off. And I know in my experience, again, like with testing out the waters of like rejection, it's like, if you're not vocal about enjoying some of like the craziness, it's like the more crazy I get to see if it's going to push you away.
Yeah.
And so, because it is like, you want to know right away, where you stand with people, like the people that make you guess. It's like, that's like a one-way ticket for me to be like, peace. And so I'm actually more comfortable alone than I am with other people. Because
that's so good to hear. I'm like, because people are like, you're an extrovert, but like, I'm like, you don't understand. Like, if I could be alone all the time,
right?
They think as we're loud, that must mean we love people. No.
So I relate to that because the 3s are like that too. I love like solitude.
Yeah.
Like, because I'm so upfront, out front, and, you know, dealing with people all the time, having to be that outgoing person or that personality, that when I'm by myself, I just like, one of my most favorite things to do is, and Shelly makes fun of me, my wife makes fun of me, that like, if she'll go out of town or something and I'll be by myself, I love to go to a restaurant and sit at a table alone and eat. There's something so refreshing about just being by myself, you know?
Yeah,
she's like, you're such a creeper for like being, you know, for going to a restaurant by yourself. But I don't know. There's just something about it. So I'm glad to hear that. Because 8s and 3s. So I was mistyped as an 8.
Right.
And 8s and 3s, you know, have a lot of those outgoing, you know, qualities and personalities.
Yeah.
So
that's really good.
Well, I have a question. How do you guys perceive trauma as an 8?
The word trauma.
The word itself is traumatic.
Yeah, the word itself. So like, I'll start it, Missy. I'm going first all the time, and I apologize, but I'm going to keep going. So trauma.
Such an 8 thing.
Trauma was a weird word for me because anytime that I would kind of interact with this word, I immediately thought it had to be something like an outside force in on me. Maybe it was something going on in like an abuse situation or something like that. And quite honestly, you know, I was mentioning actually earlier before the podcast started, like for me, like I can legitimately remember the moment that my trauma happened. And it was when I was in the 6th grade. And on October 21st, that date sticks out to me. I'll never forget it. I began struggling with obsessive compulsive disorder. And all of a sudden, my world, anyone that knows what obsessive compulsive disorder is like, my world just like my internal mind, it revolted on me. And I had no control over my thoughts. I had no control over, and it caused significant trauma in my life. So everything about me became this thing about how do I prove who I am? How do I show even just my own mind, like, no, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. This is, and so like trauma has been a hard word for me because I'm like, I can't just go grab something exterior.
Right.
It happened in here. My brain malfunctioned and it changed my life forever.
Yeah. I have a thought, and I don't know that it's accurate, so I'm asking you guys, like, the 8s that I've known, I guess the 8s that I've worked with as clients, they minimize and discount things in their lives so that they're like, no, I haven't had a lot of things that have been traumatic. And then I'll ask them about things and they'll tell me, and I'm like, that was traumatic.
And that's super traumatic to us, right?
Traumatic.
Yes.
What the heck are you saying? You know, so I mean, I'm just curious, is that kind of common? Is that how you guys see it, or what?
I'll let her go first.
Okay.
I mean, and I know, and I've spent the last year in my own kind of mental health roller coaster of, is it PTSD? Is it anxiety? Is it depression? Is it ADHD? Is it OCD? And I have literally like 6 health professionals right now, like, and we all think it's like something different. And so it's similar to what Blake said. My thing is the initial thing of trauma was, oh, well, I mean, other people have had worse things than me.
Right. That's what I hear.
Like, I'm fine. Like,
Right.
I'm fine. Like, I did it. I'm like, I fixed it. And at least for me as an 8, kind of like what you were saying, Deb, I don't want to admit that anything was traumatic, because then that means that I'm weak.
Yeah.
I don't want to admit that I'm struggling with anything, because then that means that I'm weak. And I've literally spent 37 years not being weak.
Yeah. Yeah.
The persona that I've put out there.
That's
And so all of a sudden, when it's like you have everybody forcing you to tap into your vulnerable thing, like at the same time, and that's okay to not be okay, that it's okay to, like, I've cried more in the last 2 years than I cried in 35 years.
Yeah.
So that in and of itself makes trauma insanely hard to get to, because I know for me, as soon as I would start crying, I'd be like, this is stupid. I'm fine. And I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
It almost like your toys have to be taken away. Like, there has to be a moment of reckoning for an 8. So again, with our intensity, something like equal and opposite, like, or, forces, like something's got to come at me hard to get me to stop and go, I'm broken. And so I know for me, it was, it's part of my story now that I had a mental breakdown in 2017 and was quite honestly, I was on the phone with my mom, my wife, and we were sitting in my bathroom. I was like, I think it's time for me to go to the mental hospital. Like, I need you to call the ambulance. I'm losing my mind. And that was the moment I was finally able to meet a force in my life that stopped me enough to go, Blake, you're broken.
Yeah.
And
this is normal.
And then
normal response.
Exactly.
And then an interesting thing has become, and very 8-ish of me, is it becomes the thing now that's like, that becomes like, now this is my mission. And so like now my trauma becomes my mission. So if anyone that I sit down with for more than an hour, at some point we're probably getting to mental illness. We're probably getting to because for me it's okay now, and here's where the control and the strength comes in as an 8. It's like, well, nobody else was talking whenever I was suffering as a kid.
Right.
And so who's going to stand up and say, it's not weird to have your brain start telling you weird things and start thinking maybe you've lost your mind.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was this, okay, now my trauma becomes something that I'm using as a kind of a mission.
It's interesting because it's not something that we talk about really.
No.
You know what I mean? I mean, it has much more recently, especially even since COVID, and people going, we're not made to be in isolation all the time.
Yeah, man.
Right. That's a place we go for, but it's not a place we stay.
Yeah.
And so we're not meant for that. And so I think it's become a little more talked about recently, but when we were kids, it wasn't.
No, man.
I mean, it just wasn't. It wasn't talked about.
Yeah.
So
not at all.
Well, I think the first time I told my mom that I was going to therapy, or that I was going to go see a therapist, she goes, "Why? There's nothing wrong with you."
Yeah.
And I was like, because especially like her generation, like growing up in the 50s and the 60s, it was even more of a stigma. Like,
right.
There's something wrong with you.
Exactly.
That's why you're going to therapy. And it's like, I always respond in this very like adamant, dominant, like you, like everybody needs, I'm like, you don't have somebody that you talked about your shit. I'm like, you're a danger to the rest.
Yeah, exactly right. That's exactly right.
You need to go and talk to somebody that's like, has an unbiased view of like what's going on in their life.
That's absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
And speaking to Blake's like mental breakdown a little bit, I definitely had a mental breakdown in the last 2 years. And I kind of have one like every other day, it seems, for the past like month, since my conflicting diagnosis have like all come to like a head. And as an example of what trauma is like for an 8, so I own a gym and I coach classes. I'm on. So kind of like being a pastor, like when it's time to go, you're on. You're not behind the computer. You're not just answering emails.
No.
You don't get to just like cry for a second and come
No.
back
No.
for an hour. It's like I'm trying to deliver someone's like best hour of their day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
or distract them from burpees. So there was one particular day, and this happened. It actually happened last week. I mean, it was a full blown like dysfunctional day. Like I could not get through the day. I couldn't do the things that I was supposed to do. And I was on the phone with one of my members and close friends of mine. And I was on the phone with her for a good 3.5 hours until she had to get off the phone. And then she came to 4:30 class. And so I was coaching the 3:30 class as she walked in, and I could tell by the look at her face that she was kind of like, what? Like what?
Yes.
And she went to the bathroom to go change. And I went into the bathroom just to say, I'm again, as an A, I'm so sorry I took up all of your time. Like, I'm fine. Like, we didn't need to talk about it.
Cool. Everything's great.
Having a
Everything's
middle
good.
Everything is awesome.
Yeah.
It's we're good. So I didn't even say anything yet, because when I walked in, she just goes, and I mean, the look on her face was of utter, like shock. Not even. And she goes, "Are you the same person?"
Yeah.
Dude. Yeah.
How can you just pull yourself together like that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I went, yeah. And she's like, I mean, I'm like happy, but at the same time, I'm a little scared, because she said, this is not what I was expecting based on the person that I was on the phone with. And I said, well, none of my stuff is anybody else's responsibility.
Mm.
She said, I know, miss, but like, it's okay to not be okay. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. That's what everybody said. And then and she said, but seriously, like, I wasn't expecting you to be like in the fetal position, like crying while people are trying to work out. She's like, but I was expecting to see somebody that like maybe looked a little tired, maybe looked a little stressed, like maybe it wasn't the best day. Yeah. And she goes, I walk in and like, you're dancing and you're like laughing and like cheering people on. And I usually would take that as like a badge of honor. Yeah. That like, I've hit it. I did it. I showed the world that like, I'm fine. And instead her response was, I'm more concerned than I was.
Yeah.
Because she said, because your ability to do that is concerning. And I looked at her and said, what do you think I've been doing for 37 years?
Right.
Yeah, this is normal.
Dude.
Exactly.
And we did. And I guess that story, I'm hoping like if somebody hears that, that it's like, that's not normal. Like that's not like, that's a coping mechanism.
Well, I will say it's not healthy, but it is normal for an A.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it is normal for an A, but it's not a healthy
response.
To that response. Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's even, and what Missy's talking about is the, this is the trusted relationships thing.
Yes.
It's having the person in your life that'll go, I know you're not okay. So let the guard down for a second.
Yeah.
Let's figure this out. Let me help you walk through. Cause obviously you just got to go do your job. I mean, I'm sitting here, I'm like, oh man, you got to go do your job. Like, I mean, I still got to go get up on stage and do my thing, like whatever. But the reality is having someone who, so for me, it's, you know, my wife, she came up to me last week at church, and I was having a particularly stressful day, and I was, and quite honestly, like my brain was just, I was having a lot of thoughts that I couldn't really get control of. And I'm walking up on stage and I do the thing, and she's in the back, and I have kind of some small compulsive behaviors that if you know me, you can see them. But if you didn't know me, you wouldn't know what's going on. My wife is in the back of the auditorium. She sees a couple of compulsive behaviors, and she's the first person at the green room when I walk out, and she goes, okay, I know you're not okay. And then quite honestly, she wraps me up and gives me a big hug, which for me is just a massive, It's disarming.
Yeah, right.
It's I'm not going to play by your rules right now. Like you're going to play by mine, and you need frankly you need a hug.
Yeah.
All right,
you don't have to say anything.
No, I'm like, all right, man.
I'm gonna bear hug
Oh,
you.
give me a hug right now.
So speaking of which, how do you guys? Okay, so how do you tap into your soft side? Like,
oh man,
like because eights are perceived as, you know, having it all together and just having that front and being
intimidating, domineering, controlling.
So how do you how do you guys tap into that?
We don't. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah.
Because we don't have
you gotta have the beat the hell out of you, and then finally it's like, all right, fine, here it is.
I think my favorite like relationship thing throughout my whole life is being like, oh, you're just gonna walk away? Like you're gonna walk away while I'm like this? Like you're not even gonna give me a hug? And then they're like, oh, you and I'm like, don't touch me. Like it's like,
yeah,
it's like this, like all I want is you to love me, and then all I'm gonna do is push you away. And so I know with my struggles right now, and I have tons of thoughts that I can't control. And one very difficult thing is my husband's a 1.
Yeah.
They're not emotional.
Not at all.
They don't feel things very deeply.
Right.
There's a black, there's a white, there's a literal, there's a spreadsheet for everything. I literally found a shirt the other day that says data is greater than feelings. Sent it to my husband, and he was
greater than feelings.
and like, yes. And I was like, like that's why. And so he doesn't necessarily, like, it's like he knows, but he may not always say, I know that you're not okay. So that's a big thing that we always have to work on a little bit. And so for me to stay into my soft side when I'm not okay, when I'm struggling, when I do really need someone to help me,
right,
is I constantly have to say to myself, but what do you really want?
Yeah.
Like, do you want to roll over on the other side of the bed and protect yourself? Or does cuddling actually make you feel better? Like, do you want to storm off in the other room to prove a point? Or do you just want someone to give you a hug? And even the ability to ask myself that question, that's 2 years in the making of constant EMDR and like other therapy. Because I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, I wouldn't even have had the ability to ask myself that question. Yeah. If you did something that I flagged as a threat, rolling over, other bed, explicit.
See like, in 2 weeks.
This is hilarious. I threatened divorce not really, but I did. I used the divorce word with my wife because she packed me the wrong flannel like 10 years ago. And I was like, oh my God. Yeah, we've been married for like, she's just like, okay, whatever.
She's like, okay, you'll get over it.
Yeah, you're gonna be all right. But I mean, that was the way I lived in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I whenever we think about softs, like I think something I heard this recently, and this is maybe a little weird, but I mean, you're a counselor, so you've had people do this. So something that I have done is I've started spending a lot of time with that little boy. And so quite honestly,
wait, what little boy?
Yeah, exactly. Me. And so as a dad, so my son, and this was really helpful for me to kind of start visualizing. My son this last summer started struggling with panic attacks. And it was one of the most helpless moments of my life. And it was awful. That said, and I couldn't fix it, couldn't control it. So I'm talking about that.
That's even harder.
Yeah. But one of the things that allowed me to do was, I remember as a kid, I would always say things like, man, I wish somebody could like help me. Would somebody pray for me? Would somebody, and if I believe the things I say I do, and even if you're, listening to this and maybe those aren't beliefs you subscribe to, these are still things you can do. I pray for him. Like if I believe what I believe about time and God and his ability to be like, I pray for the 12-year-old boy that walked into the movie and then walked out a different person. Just the other day I was really struggling. And I was my wife, she probably laughed at me. She saw me, but I was like, Blake, and I was not talking to me. I was talking to that
12-year-old.
kid.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's like, Blake, it's okay. I see you. And we're going to get through this. And what I can tell you is that you're going to make it. and everything's going to be okay.
Mhm.
And so I've gotten to where I do that quite a bit. The other thing is like, if you anywhere in our community, if you're around me, like loud leader, all those sorts of things at home, like my wife holds me every single night. And that's the way we end our day. And it's the safest place I have. So like quite literally, that poor woman, like I literally go to bed at night and she's holding me. And so I think as an 8, recognize like that for me is I have to have those tender moments every single day. If I don't, I will get into a default of get it done, move on, like just
check it off the list.
Let's rock and roll. Let's get this over with. But having someone every single day, like my wife's gonna be like, you coming over here or not? You know? And that's been a game changer for me.
Missy's laughing.
She is. Oh, I'm only laughing because, and then no, that's amazing. And I'm laughing because the only thing I was going to add to that is where I think my one husband sometimes is very shell shocked in the, like, I can't say, especially dealing with some of the mental health stuff of not having any comprehension of the uncontrolled thoughts or anxiety or those things they feel. And he's an optimizer. He can't fix it. He can't fix this. And so he shuts down because he doesn't know what to say. He knows he gives one compliment and that's not enough. So then he's like, well, even compliments don't help. So then he shuts those down. And I'm like, say them again. Like, so,
one more time.
He's like, but how many do you need? And I'm like,
more.
All of the things, all of them.
The compliments.
Yeah. So it's like, he gets into this, but I will say, like, the one thing that he probably notices the most is if I roll to the other side of the bed. He, in the last like year, especially, so he always used to say, like, assume the position. Where it would be like, all right, assume the position, like, and we're just like cuddling because he's a cuddler, like, to go to bed. And if I was watching baseball, like and he went to bed, like I would get a text that he'd be like, I can't fall asleep, like, come assume the position. I'd be like, fine, I'm going to bed. Like in the past, like I would say in the past year, especially, instead of him like poking the bear almost, being like, what are you doing? Or like, oh, you're this, he just will ask a question like, why are you going to stay over there? Like, he's like, are you like, do you really want to be over there? Like, why are you like, and it's just a, like, even if, you know, he kind of falls to like the facade that I'm putting on like the rest of the day, it's like at the end of the night, it's like, that's kind of our thing too. Where, and I will say that is one big thing that I've noticed is that instead of, again, like poking, like, well, Missy's mad about nothing or Missy's this, it's like, know that it's helpful, but it's like for him just to be like, are you going to come over here? And I can be like, do you want me to come over there?
Yes. I want to. This is crazy. As a guy, like I want to be pursued so bad. Like, I mean, we could get into the whole thing about sex and all that sort of stuff at this point, but the reality is like, I want my wife to pursue me.
8's take 2.
8's take 2. Yeah.
Okay, now this would drive you crazy. And oh my God, this just turned into like a relation, like dating an 8. That's right. And like, I'm going to make my husband listen to this podcast for sure. So no, one thing, so the same thing, like I have to be pursued, which is why I'm much more comfortable in the dating aspect than I am in the relationship aspect.
Oh man, that's good.
When the pursuing is, I mean, it shouldn't be done and like never done, but like whatever, you have a 5-year-old.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So then I think, well, maybe they don't want to be with me anymore. And so when there's not that pursuing, then I get that rejection sensitivity. Like my ears perk up and then it's like, I'm not getting enough attention. This person doesn't want me, so then I start feeling a little bit more unhealthy with like, then some of the insecurities and, especially with date nights. So the challenge is with a 1.
Oh man. Yeah.
They plan everything. Everything.
Sounds awful.
I will say you know what? Like, it would be really great if you could just like plan a date night. And he would be like, well, miss, like, I want to go. So if you want to go do something, just plan it. And I'm like, but if you plan it, I don't know that you want to do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That doesn't help me. And
No, man.
And he's like over here, Enneagram 1, screaming like, why do I have to plan everything? Because that's a that like never ending to-do list.
Oh, yeah, man.
Yeah.
And he has a job that he's managing people. He's managing 13 states and reps, and it's chaos. And it's like, I know that he's screaming and asking for help, that he's like, hey, I will spend time with you. I like that. You just pick what you want to do. We'll go do it. And he will always say, miss, if I don't want to do something, I'm not going to go do it. I'm like, that doesn't help. Like,
yes. There's so much. No, she's absolutely right. Yeah. Nothing to add. That's exactly right.
say, Missy, I would like to go to the movie with you. And then the inside little Missy goes, he wants to go to the movie with me.
Yes. Just to be invited to the party, for me to be able to like show up and be there just because you want to be there.
Yeah.
I told someone recently, I am so used to having to earn my way into every single circle I'm in. If I wanted to be a part of the cool kids, I had to be the starter on the football team. If I wanted like everything, I had to be the absolute best.
Prove yourself.
Yeah. And so like to have someone pursue me and be like, no, man, like I just want you, you know, for my wife to do that. You know, I'm like,
that's huge.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
Especially because like my wife's super pretty and I was a geeky high school kid that like couldn't get
She is
anybody.
beautiful.
And I'm like, dude, like this hot chick wants me. This is awesome. This is cool.
Like what you just said, like and this is what we share with 3. So like I actually, when I got the 8 thing and then I started reading about the other numbers, I thought I should have been a 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But then I read the thing about like mass. I'm like, no, I don't.
No.
Yep.
I was like, oh yeah, no, I can't not be me. I was like, that's not me. But using the achieving, that it was like, okay, like I was it was like, I was the star athlete. I was the straight A student. I was valedictorian. I was senior class president. Like I was going to be perfect so that you wanted me there.
Right.
So that the guys wanted to date me, the girls wanted to be me, like I could get the scholarship, I would do all the things because I constantly felt like I had to earn those things, or you're out earning the rejection. Like it's like so then for someone just to be like, I actually just like, you didn't even know that you were earning anything, and somebody surprises you with something like that's been a big thing. Cause at the same time, I have to understand that as a 1, he's like, oh my God, can I just not plan something that like I don't have to do? And I'm like, why do you hate me? Why don't you?
Well, we've got to wrap it up for today, but this has been
a blast.
Yeah.
I mean, I love these 8.
Oh man, yeah, we're a lot of fun.
Just so that you guys know, I
they?
was mistyped as an 8 when I very first.
Oh my gosh.
So I relate to 99% of everything that you're saying, except my motives are different. So 3s and 8s look a lot alike.
Right,
you know, they do look a lot alike.
Yep.
So
well, we may have to revisit some of this.
yeah, this
I
is
know.
awesome.
It's
These
been
guys have
great.
been incredible.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Missy and Blake.
Absolutely.
I mean, you've really given us a lot of, I don't know, a really good kind of a little bit of a telescope, maybe?
So
A look
before
into the 8s.
so
Yeah.
before we leave,
I've learned a lot.
Blake, what do you want our listeners to know about the 8s? That
Okay, yeah.
outside,
like
what is it you could say on behalf of 8s to the world
What
that
would
they
you want
need
the
to
world
know?
to know about 8s?
Yeah.
You don't have to be afraid of me.
Oh, that's
That's
good.
good.
Yeah, you don't have to be
Missy, you
afraid
got
of
a
me.
one-liner? What do you want? What do you want everybody to know about the 8s?
I don't know if it's a one-liner, but what I would want everybody to know about 8s is when you meet someone that has an extremely tough exterior, it's because they couldn't survive without that.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to ask what caused that.
Yep.
And you can't just judge somebody by their defense mechanism. Like literally, like it's if somebody's tough and like, you know what I'm talking about? I'm not talking about like a bully. Like we're talking about like somebody that is like they have tenacity. Like they're going to pick themselves up. They're going to keep going.
There's some intensity. There's some passion.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just be willing to want to get to know
Yeah.
what awful thing happened to that person that they thought that that's all that they needed to be.
Yeah.
And because the same thing, it's because there's such good things in an 8.
Yeah.
They're just afraid of having that be shown.
Right.
And
That vulnerability is their core fear.
That's so good. These guys have been
nuggets.
awesome today.
Major
Guys have been
nuggets from
awesome.
our
man.
8.
I know.
I know, it's been great. Well, thank you so much.
You
for
set the
being
bar
here.
high, A.
Let's do
You
it.
Set the bar
As
high.
we should.
good luck, 9s. We'll see how this
Guys, we're
Come
gonna come
on.
along in a couple
Yeah,
of weeks, and
man.
we're gonna
They'll
see
be-
if they
they'll
can,
be
you
okay.
know,
They'll be fine.
see if they can
They'll-
hold
they'll-
the standard high.
Hey, we 9s are gonna show up too.
Yeah, you will.
All right. Till next time. Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Bye.
If this content has been helpful to you, I'd appreciate it if you would please rate the podcast, post it, and share it on social media. And also post a review. If you'd like to get in contact with me, my phone is 479-561-7600 or email Dr. Deborah at anchoredhopecounseling.net or Dr. Deborah at drdebfordoctors.com. Our website at www.anchoredhopecounseling.net has some useful information, and you can also reach out to me through the website. Remember, you are enough just the way you are, and you are loved.